a closer read on how much the U.S. economy grew in the first 3 months of this year. And it was slightly better than expected. According to the third estimate, real gross domestic product increased at an annualized rate of 1.4 percentage points in the first quarter. Okay, for more on the state of the U.S. economy as we head into this very important first presidential debate, we're joined by Ken Kuttner. He is professor of economics at Williams College. Ken, always good to see you. Thanks very much. I know you probably want to prop yourself in front of the TV in about 45 minutes and watch this debate as well. But let's talk about this latest information. How significant is the upward GDP revision, if at all?
Well, it's pretty small potatoes. As was already summarized, the sources are coming from a number of different places. I think the one concern that everybody has is the downward revision in consumption spending. That was revised down by 0.5 percentage point. And taken together with other indicators of consumer sentiment, that's a little bit concerning for me.
Yeah, it's not just the consumption. I think that also in that report it showed that that Americans simply aren't saving very much money these days as well. So what about that? Does that cause you concern?
Well, incomes are down and consumption is down, and so that both are falling, and so there's less leftover saving as well. Yeah, if consumers were actually, the decline in saving rate could actually be interpreted as a good thing. If you think the economy is going to do great in the future, you're going to save less now. But in that context, I think the more worrying thing is the decline in consumption and the decline in personal income as well.
Okay, so let's put you in the seat of being a Fed governor for just a minute. What about the Fed's inflation reading coming out Friday? That the personal consumption expenditures price index that the Fed really closely watches. What would you be expecting, and what would you talk to your colleagues about?
Well, that's going to be a huge number for the Fed. I mean, the reason that Fed policy has been on hold this year and will probably continue to be on hold for the rest of the year is, or at least until September, maybe December, is the lack of any real significant progress on inflation. I don't think they're going to really move. You're going to cut rates until they see a little bit more downward movement in the inflation rate. If we don't get that, we might not get an interest rate cut in 2024 at all.
Really? I mean, because some people are talking about still having 3 this year. I mean, the numbers have been moving in a pretty small area. I think everybody can agree on that. But if there is some very positive news in terms of things slowing down, inflation getting under control, I mean, clearly that's what everyone's counting on. So factor in personal income and spending data that's also going to come out. It's just a very important time.
It is. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, I think earlier in the year, we were looking at expectations of 3 rate cuts in 2024. That, I think, is now down to 1 rate cut. And I think the Fed is really going to want to see some progress on inflation or a significant weakening in economic conditions to induce them to cut. So I'm not expecting a lot in terms of rate cuts this year.
Okay. And what about the way these figures are adding up with the way Americans feel about what is going on with the economy? Because obviously that sentiment really carries a great deal of weight.
Oh, it does indeed. And that's part of the same picture. If you look at the Conference Board consumer confidence numbers, those have been edging down a bit. The Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey is down quite a lot in the past couple of months, down to, in fact, it was gaining throughout 2024. Now it's plummeted back down to where it was at the end of 2023, which is very, very concerning. And that's consistent, of course, with a pullback in the slower consumption growth. And it is obviously going to be concerning for the incumbent president who's coming up in the debate tonight.
Yeah, nice transition. It's like you can read my notes here in front of me. How important is the economy going to be in tonight's debate? I mean, to go back to what we heard in the 90s, it's the economy, stupid.
It is the economy, stupid. And this is something where economists have been puzzled for a while. On paper, the numbers for the economy look pretty good. Inflation has come down, still a little stubbornly high, but it has come down. Economic growth has been solid. Unemployment rate is near historic lows. The vacancy rate is still very high, so indicating that it's quite easy for people to find jobs. And yet consumer confidence is low, and people report feeling very unhappy about the economy. A bit of a conundrum, and that's going to be a big concern for Biden going into this.
Exactly. And look, going into it, voters' impression of both candidates, because these two are pretty far apart on a lot of issues, and the Fed comes to mind instantly. Trump really wants a hands-on approach with the Fed, which is something that virtually every other president has kind of had the total hands-off policy. So what do you think the candidates are going to tell voters out there when it comes to the Fed, when it comes to job creation, when it comes to inflation?
Well, it's interesting, just backing up a step. It's interesting and a little bit puzzling that in all the talk of inflation, most of the blame is being put on Biden as opposed to the Fed. So I'm not quite sure why that is, because you could say it was the Fed's fault as much as it was the administration's fault. But for some reason, the Fed seems not to be taking the flak on it. Now, in terms of what what Trump might do with the Fed, that is really a wild card. I mean, while he was president, he was beat up in the Fed for raising interest rates, and
Right.
now, would he be pressuring the Fed to be lowering interest rates if he were in office now? That would be counterproductive. That would be inflationary. So I don't know if he has really a coherent philosophy in terms of what he thinks the Fed ought to do, other than that they be loyal to him and do what he thinks that they should do.
Okay, it's going to be interesting tonight. As always, Ken Kuttner, I can't thank you enough for your insight.
All right, you're very welcome.
Okay.